In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Last week, I made the argument that we need to look at the Bible for a handful of reasons. Today, we start looking at it, and we start in the very beginning. The first book of the Bible, Genesis, which is the foundation of the Old Testament. It's worth pausing here to note that the Genesis 1:1 has got to be among the most famous words of all time. Right in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Many people know that, even if they don't know they know it. They've heard it enough that they know it. It's worth noting that these are among the most controversial words of all time, and it's worth noting that these are among the most important words of all time, for they do nothing less than make a claim to ultimate reality. So, the book of Genesis was written by Moses, one of 5 books that Moses wrote: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. We refer to these as the Pentateuch, Penti 5, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Scriptures. Often also referred to as the law or Torah, Hebrew word for law. They were written towards the end of the 40 years that the Jews were wandering around in the wilderness and the desert. Moses had been told that because of his pride, he was not going to be able to enter the promised land. But under the direction of the Holy Spirit, he ends up writing out a number of things for the Jewish people. So we can, of course, divide the Bible in all kinds of ways. I mean, the most common, of course, would be the Old Covenant Hebrew Scriptures and the New Covenant or the New Testament. We could divide it by, it is divided by chapter and verse. It's divided by different kinds of literary genre. Again, in the Old Testament, we've got the prophets, we've got the law, we've got wisdom literature. In the New Testament, you've got the Gospels, and you've got all the letters and things. So we can divide the Bible in a lot of different ways. You may be surprised to hear that one of the big divisions is Genesis 1 through 11, and then everything else. So Genesis 1 through 11 is referred to or thought of as universal history. So you got this opening of the cosmic origin story, how everything gets started and stuff that is happening to everybody. And then starting with Genesis 12 and going on, really from Genesis 12 through the rest of the Old Testament and through the Gospels and halfway through the book of Acts, you really have pretty exclusively the story of the Jewish people, of the descendants of Abraham through Isaac. So that's going to be following out of the Abrahamic covenant, and it's going to be this long, it's going to be this long Jewish story. Genesis 1 through 11, generally, Genesis 1 through 3 more specifically, is understood by theologians to be the start of everything, and it gets a lot of attention, because if you want to understand something, you go back to the beginnings of it, why it was created, you go back to the origin, you go back to the person who did create it. I mean, you ask questions of them to understand everything that has followed. And so Genesis 1 through 3 is pivotal for that reason. It's also pivotal because this is where we learn the basics about God and man and creation and sin and evil and salvation and science and prophecy and marriage and all kinds of things have their origin in these first 11 chapters of Genesis. So our focus today is on Genesis chapter 1, and I'm just going to make the most basic observation. It starts with God. Doesn't prove God's existence. We don't get really in the Bible, we don't get much proving God's existence. It just starts with God. We get a little bit of arguments about God, but But that's more what philosophers and theologians developed: cosmological argument, ontological argument, teleological argument. There's a variety of different ways that people try to prove God. The Bible doesn't spend a lot of time on that. What instead we get is this declaration: there is a God, and he was in the beginning, and he has the ability to speak worlds into existence. We'll come back and start unpacking this tomorrow. Have a good day.